who is right, Karl Marx or Leslie Chang, and is work or labor alienating and exploitive?
Yes. Honestly, I feel like they were both like wrong in the context, but Chang was more in the wrong because it seemed very dictatory. Like they had rights in a sense, but they couldn't do anything or go anywhere without the approval of the higher ups.
But that's how Marx describes communism, even though he's only imagined it, not lived in it.
Yeah, but for someone who's wrote like never really lived it, it seemed like Chang should have like focused hers more on communism because that's what hers read as.
Yeah.
It seemed more. So she seemed to have more of the experience of the topic that he was writing on.
Yeah. So. I mean, it is communism in China, so
yeah.
I feel like hers captures like the whole aspect of communism, and like more so than his does because she can like see it and like experience it in real life, in real time.
Yeah, his was written more about like research, and hers was through experience.
His was like ideas.
Yeah.
Or like the thought of it, or
hers was like the end. She was in it. She was involved. She knew what was going on. She spoke to others, so she had more, I think, credibility in her discussion of it than he did.
Yeah.
So it's awful.
And then with the part where is it? Where he mentions the isolation of humans from aspects of their human nature. Human nature being what makes us different than other species. So labor and production, the transformation of the world is what human nature is. And he says that it's the isolation of humans from the aspect of their human nature, and then the four things of like the capitalist society, productive activity, so you only work for your wages and that's it. Like that's the only purpose of you being there is to support yourself and be able to like financially support yourself. And then you're isolated or alienated from the product, so even though you're a part of the assembly line, you're the worker, you have no hold or control over like the bag. Like in the factory, the girls are making designer handbags, but they don't really have
the fun stuff.
Yeah, they don't have any say over what goes with the bag or who it goes to. They're just part of the line.
Yeah.
And
What I got from it, because it said they had a quote in 2003 about China's cabinets in regards to labor, that migration was the key to their country's development and their labor stuff, because apparently people from the outside world, they make higher quality because they're more engaged into it, and they also have to pay them less, so they're getting more profit and without having to put out the money to, I guess, obtain that product.
Yeah, there's always that like saying made in China, so it's made a little bit cheaper than like higher quality stuff that's made in like Sweden, like Norway or something.
Yeah, so they have to pay them less and they work longer hours.
Yeah, it's just mostly about mass production.
There was one part towards, I think, the mid to end of it that said they had like a sales quota and stuff like that, and whoever like made the least amount, they fired them at the end of the month.
Yeah, so I think she was talking, or someone in the class brought up competition.
Yeah.
And it was like you're alienated from your fellow workers. So one chick brought up the cubicles.
Yeah.
So you're isolated in your little area, and it's just about you and your work and your production. So like there's no socializing with your fellow workers. It's all about competition and production. And like if you don't compete at the standard and you like fall below it, then you can get fired and they can just replace you.
Yeah. I think for Chang, like even though they talked about how they were exploited and stuff, they didn't seem to be as alienated as what Marx said, because they said the girls would quit in groups. Like they'd get together and discuss to quit, or they'd move to the same factories together, and then they'd like move in drones slowly. Like some would stay and some would quit. So like they'd make plans to quit, but not all. It was not 100% concrete that they would quit together.
It's weird though, because at one point, I remember reading that they said that, or she was telling the author, Chang, that like most everybody, the girls will come from rural areas, like out farming in village or whatever, and they move into the city and like get into any factory that they want, start working, and I guess to them, even though like they're being exploited and alienated from like their lives, other people, and just like what she said is their human potential, humanity, freedom, and just in that aspect they're being dehumanized. Like they would rather be, for whatever reason, in there, whether it's for like money or they were learning English as they like sit there and work. So I guess even with the like demanding environment and just like lack of benefits, they take like the very little that they can get, and maybe like eventually use that to like push out of the factories.
Well, towards the, I think, beginning of the article, it said the reason they preferred it because they liked the fact that they could break from tradition, their traditional clothes, the fact that their parents would pick out their future spouse. They felt that since they were coming in to their own money, they had a right to pick them. They gave them more rights to have a job.
Okay, so you take like the like lack of freedom with like a grain of salt.
I don't know, because I thought it was a large quarter of the beginning of the article was about how they went from their traditional clothing of, the word I can't pronounce, to like jeans and stuff. They became like their own self in a sense, but with a lot more, I guess, expected of them. It was a more controlling environment, but yet they had more freedom than they did back home, so they preferred that, the factory life.
Yeah. And I guess it is a different type of labor. I mean, obviously it's still like labor.
They just switched labor.
Yeah, from like farming to like mass assembly line production.
I guess they had more freedom in a sense.
I mean, you're not really getting paid if you're in a rural area village. It's just like the food to support your family, and that's it. Like you don't starve.
Like they had like a one-child limit. They spoke of how the child ratio, not the child ratio, the child laws, I guess, were more lax in rural areas. So the more kids they had, the more support they had. So the one girl, I can't remember their name, they referenced that she would clean the house and stuff like that. And so she was trying to get out to a factory because it was more freedom in a sense, but with the same work environment, but more benefit, I guess.
Did it? Well, I know like China has like an overpopulated thing. That's why they have the
one child per household.
Yeah.
But I said it was more lax in the countryside, the rural areas.
Okay, they're not really taking up any space, and if you support yourself, then that's fine, I guess.
I don't really care. You were talking about the factories earlier. It said that where is it? More than a quarter of the population are on assembly lines, with most of factories consisting of young unskilled women and stuff like that. The Dongguan. They said it was known for its like factories and hookers. So like it seemed. She said most of her friends that went through the city, they don't really remember it. But then again, it talks about how big and how vast and how many factories and all this was in it. So the fact that it said that it was like a big city, it seems like the more they don't want to see it. They don't want to like recognize that it's there.
What do you mean?
Like she
like they just want to be ignorant to that.
She said it was like some ways she talked about it seemed like it was a relatively small city, and in other ways it made it seem like really large, really big, really hard to miss. So I guess I took that as they didn't want to see it, so they made it small, something they could like not acknowledge when they drive through it. I don't really get that.
I don't know what Dongguan looks like or whatever. But I know like the China itself is like mass populated, overpopulated. Like there's way too many people. So maybe just like in their mind they like obviously they're being isolated because of like the labor whole aspect, but then like they choose to kind of tweak or manipulate their own isolation from the whole like big
Yeah.
city that they don't want to really see or be a part of from that.
I think between the two articles that definitely Chang's made it seem more dangerous in effect because of how much she brought up the factories and how they're overworked and how small. I think it said that we're like 50 people to a room.
I can't remember if I thought about it or said it. Did I already say that Marx didn't actually live in one? He just thought of the idea and was like going based off of that.
I think I think he said something about it being through ideas and research rather than experience.
I feel like in a sense they're both right.
I think, like I agree with you. I think they're both right, but
I mean,
hers
it's
is
based
more-
off the same thing. They're both talking about communism. His is just like
His is more
a theory.
direct,
Yeah.
but it is also a theory. Hers is more like indirect, but it's more concrete. I feel because she did it through
She gives
personal
it like
research.
examples and stuff, and
Yeah, she
people.
went there. She experienced. She interviewed people that were going through it.
yeah.
His was just like
And what are the two girls, Min and Chun Ming, she follows or like sticks to? She said that
weren't those the two that met her for the first time, mentioned being lonely, and then skipped out on the second one, or were those two different girls?
I can't remember. I just remembered their names, Min and Chun Ming. Or that was the one that or I forgot which one, but one of them was like, "Oh, here, take this purse off the assembly line. It's like this is a gift to you," and the author was like, "Oh, why don't you give that to your boyfriend's mom?" She was like, "Oh, no," and like kind of scoffs at her, and she's like, she lives in the rural area. What is she gonna do with like a designer bag?
Yeah.
Like she doesn't need that. And then another one, or the other one, I think, she was saying that like your whole interaction with people, or like boyfriend, family, friends, is in your phone, because like in the factories, they don't have, what was it? Like they're isolated or alienated from their fellow workers.
So their whole context with their phones. I thought that was kind of funny, actually. Not like funny, haha, but
Like a coincidence how
Yeah,
we
we
are
do it.
we're kind of like that.
We
Not
do it.
really by like lack of freedom, but we kind of like put ourselves in that, at least in newer generations.
yeah, we find it more interesting than the outside world half the time.
Yeah, and
So-
like you always see those advertisements or criticizing drawings where it's like somebody's face is glued to their phone
Oh yeah, I've seen
and like some tragic things happening behind them, or like people all whip out their phones.
to record something.
Yeah, and I don't feel like that makes us like partially communist. I just feel like that's a whole
That's-
different aspect of
That's
social.
just a fun connection to make.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's obviously a direct connection that we just isolate ourselves with technology.
I think what was it? That one dude was like embarrassed to admit that he couldn't afford a phone, and that like affected his ability to work somewhere for his boss or something. Wasn't
He
it?
couldn't afford a phone?
Yeah.
Oh.
Towards like I think the third to last page.
Oh.
There was so much information to retain. I was just like
She
glimpse.
didn't she buy the girls that she was like interviewing, or I guess like interviewing and following?
I know she bought them food when they'd meet.
I thought they bought them phones.
She may have.
Alright.
I know for sure she bought food.
Oh. Nice. And then what else?
I thought it was back to the factories that they it was easy to get into a factory, but it was really hard to leave as they needed their boss's permission for them to leave. Like you could deny it and they'd be stuck there.
What did it? Well, what if you just don't show up? Do like they come and get you?
The way it was described, it seems like they have housings in the factories. So kind of like a university,
that would make
like
sense.
their dorms.
So it like, obviously we don't know really what it looks like, but I can just imagine like, she showed us that one picture of like Greensboro. It's early and it's like the big wall, and she was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this is the market. This is like the housing areas." So it's
Just
kind of
like
like a
CG.
big gated community
Yeah.
with the factory in it. And it was saying that there's like a movie theater, prostitution.
I
And-
have that in here. They talk about a sneaker factory that was so large that it had its own hospital, movie theater, fire department.
Yeah, so it's like a mini
Bar.
community.
Yeah.
So you just like, I mean, it has all those tiny little aspects of like a community or society, but like you're still restricted, like alienated just to that like one little pod.
Honestly, when she was describing it, I just thought of like campus, because we have like all that scenes.
But you still have the freedom on campus
Yeah.
to like venture out or whatever if you want to. But like I feel like they're a working hamster in a cage.
Yeah.
Like
so you get like
you give them the food, the water, and like a wheel, and somewhere to go to the bathroom and eat. And that's pretty much all they need to survive.
Yeah, they get the most basics with like a hint of freedom, so they think they're not being controlled.
Yeah.
Sort of like I guess, not really brainwashing, but they do stay.
Yeah.
More stay than quit.
Stay. I mean, like, how do you quit?
You don't really. I think they've mentioned a few going back home, but most of them preferred to stay, or they just went to a different factory with better working conditions.
Ah, okay. I mean, at least you can just switch factories. Is that still considered cheating or quitting?
I don't know.
If you move factories.
It did mention it several times in the article about how they moved to a better factory because it had better benefits.
Oh.
But I really didn't see how one was worse than the other. One was better than the other. They don't seem the same to me. They seem smart.
Alright.
I thought it was funny that she wrote this article, but yet she did like a sort of like a flashback thing about how when she was in college she would try to distance herself from the traditional Chinese, and like anything that involved Chinese like in class wise she'd avoid it. She would not even like consider it as an option to take. And then as she went out and wrote this article, traveled to China, like just to pretty much like immerse herself in the culture and the system to like get along with the girls to write this article. I thought that was weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you do that 360?
I mean, she didn't stay.
No, she didn't stay, but she went from not wanting to even touch and...
I mean, maybe she just didn't want to be a part of it, but
yeah.
like wanted to just have like the learning or investigating aspect of it, learning point, or just being an author or whatever.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny how she went from not wanting to be a part of the community of the subject to doing this whole paper, this whole book on it, all the research. Like, I feel like if she was going to do it, she'd have to have some interest in it to go from not wanting to.
Maybe she just wanted to expose like the communism of China. Maybe it was more of like because she didn't approve or want to be a part of like that lifestyle at all, like in her own life, like kind of like as a vantage point to like display why she didn't, or like make an example of why she didn't approve of that or like want to be a part of that lifestyle, because it sucks.
I guess her being Chinese like benefited her in a way because she blended in. No one really noticed her.
Yeah.
She like
understand the language.